The burning question everyone is asking is, do you buy a home now or should we wait until the future of 2022 to purchase a home? If so, is there going to be a house market crash coming in the near future? The answer to this question is iffy, but to be honest, yes and no. Yes to the point that you should buy now, and no to the point that there is not going to be a crash. On the basis of what I'm seeing, this is what's happening with the market being a realtor. But before we can talk about it, we've got to talk about the 2007 to 2008 house market crash. Let's just do an overview as there's so many parts on why it's worked and why it hasn't. But it's all caused by subprime mortgages. Subprime mortgages are the type of home loans extended to individuals who don't have as much money or incomplete or non-existent credit history. So lenders were really relaxed on who they gave an approval for mortgages. They could have just gave mortgages for anyone. So due to this, subprime mortgages were very common, or in terms of nowadays, it's called adjustable rate mortgages. Homeowners could have a mortgage payment that could start off really low, but soon after, because it was adjustable, it would climb to the hundreds of dollars and they were obligated to pay it, but they couldn't, and so they in turn lost their home to foreclosure. The whole entire system was really highly reluctant on home prices always rising. And soon after, markets hit a slight drop, and all of a sudden, people are losing everything like it was a downward spiral in price as foreclosures flooded the market. Due to this, of the 2007 house crash, we've got new regulations, which means that even if your home price drops, the system is no longer dependent on just the home prices, always rising or dropping. Let's talk about right now versus the 2007 housing crash. So the most important part about this is that no one can just buy a home now due to new regulations like it was in the past. This makes it more harder for people to just purchase homes and get adjustable rate mortgages and stuff like that. These new regulations maintain a hold where all of a sudden people aren't going to lose their homes and cause more foreclosures in the market to drop. On top of this, market right now, or inventory, is super low, but demand is very high. In the past, inventory was high and demand was low, which meant that there is an opposite of what's going on with 2007 housing crash. Not only this, but there was an increase in population compared to 2007, and currently there's only been 6.9 new construction homes that have been created, but our population has increased over 10 to 15 million people. So you guys can see that spread of almost 5-6 million people not having a home. In conclusion, for those of you who guys are waiting for the real estate market to just pop and have all this price drop, I'm sorry to say, but most likely we're just not going to have a real estate bubble. It's just because it's a supply and demand chain. We just don't have enough homes that are matching the growing population. So then let's talk about what is creating the high prices specifically. Even though it is supply and demand, there are other factors combining to where it's getting harder for people to afford homes and rent. Let's talk about number one, which is mortgage rates took a plunge during the pandemic, which meant that sellers knew that they could raise their prices and the monthly payment would be the same. So instead of keeping the same price, as it becomes a seller market, they were marketing prices up. Another factor on that was not only were sellers marking up the price, it was also the buyer's demand that was so high with the shortage of available homes, which fueled something called the bidding wars and basically drove prices up to higher than record pace. And this is because there are people who are more wealthy than others and they saw a home that they really loved and they decided, you know what, I want to be, the baller and I'm going to go out on the home. Yes, in turn helps other people home value go up, which meant that other people who were selling rose the prices even higher. Not only this, but builders were slow because one, there were no supplies coming, there were no lumber. You guys also remember that lumber prices also increased almost like 50%. And just in turn, there was no construction going on, which meant that the supply of homes were just same while demand was just getting higher and higher. And also, that inflation doesn't help the cost of homes being low, which in turn made houses go even higher. So here's the big question. Should you buy a house now? I'm not a wizard or somebody who can predict the future, but In turn, yes. Here are the reasons why. Let's talk about it in a perspective of someone who's going to say,
You know what? I'm going to wait until the market comes down because it has to come down, correct?
but what if in this situation it never did? And in those years, you lost a ton of equity. The question to you is, are you willing to risk gambling away a good chunk of your future equity for holding off because that the market is going to come down? In my opinion, it's not going to go down. There's not enough supply that's fueling this up. And even if it did, what happened to those people who pay premium and everyone else that's paying premium for all these homes? It's just going to keep the value of the homes up. In other words, if you were to have the money currently, but you told yourself you're going to wait a couple years, how long do you think you have to wait for those prices to come down? That's the good question that you should be asking yourself. Do you think it's going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? But remember, in those 3 years, you could have built way more equity while the price might have dipped just a little bit. And that's the risk about holding off longer, which is why you should buy now. Another reason is that it's less expensive currently to buy and own a home than it is to rent one. Because think about it like this. The beauty of a mortgage is that it is against inflation. When you have inflation, inflation goes up every single year. But when you set a mortgage rate and you sign that document, that's the mortgage rate you're going to have. And the only way that it's ever going to go up is if you get an adjustable rate mortgage. If you get a 30-year mortgage rate, it's not going to go up, other than you can refinance and get it lower. That's a way that you can hedge against inflation. Not only this, but rent prices are going up, and it's only going to go up. It never goes down. It might go down like a little bit, but over every single year, as investors know, rents go up every single year. So are you willing to put those 3-4 years by having to pay more in rent and have it increased and losing more of money in your pocket and then eventually buying a home and losing tons of equity? You can also think about it like this. Let's say you're 25 and you're going to purchase a home when you're 35. That's 10 years down the road. The average price of renting is going to be much higher than it is today. Those are the reasons why you should buy a house now instead of waiting for the future. And for those of you who just don't believe me, check out Realtor.com analysis. They say that rent growth is expected to reach about 7.1% in 2022. That's 7%, which is basically an S&P 500 amount of value. So even if you try and invest, you're not going to get that much return because you're having to pay more in rent. In turn, that means that rent is probably going to go up 300 to 400 in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months. Average home prices are expected to rise 8%, guys. The longer you wait, the less equity you're making. The earlier you can buy a home, you're going to build a lot more equity. These days, mortgage rates are even going up. They're expected to rise to the high 3s and low 4s. And right now, it is in the 3s. It's like 3.8, 3.9, and when I bought my investment condo, it was only 3.3. That tells you in the past 4 months, it rose almost 1%. That's a lot. You can see that the rise of interest rate are even going to make your mortgages even more expensive because you're going to have to pay probably that 0.5% is going to pay you about $100 more per month to the bank. Here's what you should expect if you are determined to buy a home in this market. And you really should. Remember, this is my recommendation, not a guarantee. One, you're going to find a lot that's similar to last year, but it's going to be less crazy because the market has slowly stable, even though it's a little bit crazy. You'll see a little bit higher interest rate from last year, and it will still be a seller's market. Now, it is slowing down a little bit, but it still is a very high seller's market. So you're going to have to go with what the seller says. And on top of that, home prices will rise a little bit more than it did last year. So with that being said, guys, yes, you should buy a home now. And for those of you who are thinking that there's going to be a housing bubble and then that you're going to get a cheap home for foreclosure, you're probably not. Most likely lose a lot of equity in the future. Don't wait, start now. You'll miss probably 100% of the shots you don't take. So don't regret it in the future and start now. And for those of you who probably just don't have enough money or just probably don't have the good interest rate or just have bad credit and want to bring that up, start talking with the lender to see how you can get ready, and then go ahead and start talking to a couple realtors in the local area to see how they can help you purchase your first or second or third home. And if you're in Georgia, check out my website to see how I can be your realtor if you like. If not, that's fine with me. And if you aren't sure, go ahead and check other videos that I've created to help you guys in the process of buying your first or second or third home. If you thought this video was helpful and informative, make sure you guys like this video and subscribe probably down here or up here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.